This will just be a bit of a technical stuff for Jesse for a second. In the video, I started looking at it, and we'll have to come up with another solution because the screen behind me just basically gets whited on the thing. So we'll have a look and we'll figure out a way to solve that. So thanks for some patience with us as we try to put some of that stuff together. Some time ago, I realized what my gifting is. You would think after 49 years of being in ministry, I'd have figured that out by now, but it took me a little while, and I've sort of been able to narrow down a few things. And one of them is I realized, I'm not really the evangelist type, which is important for a pastor to have that, but I realized that for the most part, I would be what I would call a teaching pastor. And so much of my messages are built around that idea with the hope and goal that by the time that we're done, you'll be able to walk out of here going, you know what? I learned something today from Coop. And so that's what I'm hoping, that at the end of the day, you'll have learned something from Coop and you'll be able to take that with you. And so a couple of things as we go through. Can you remember these messages? In fact, Jess, you take care of all of that, and I'm going to take care of all of this. Got it. Go back one. There we go. Fabulous. He's got a ton of stuff that he's got to try to manage back there. So remember this? If you watch the videos, this is what it looked like as we got near the end. I was able to figure out some way to put me beside a screen, and some of you may have even seen the video that had 3 me's, where there was me, and there was me on the screen, and there was me beside me. It was a bit of a trick, but we were able to do it. It's the mastery of technical things. But you know what? I never want to go back. I never want to go back to that. I know it's value and things like that, but we're never going back there, right? So that's my hope, that we won't ever have to go back to that again. We could if we needed to, but how many want to? Exactly, right? We like this. Even though I set the air conditioning and then I didn't set it again, and so we might be getting heated up, but that's okay. I'm about to get heated up. Because the next questions are, what's next for us? And that for me is what today's about. What's next for us? And so I want you to put on your thinking caps. I want you to put them on. I shared this slide with our Ethiopians a couple of weeks ago, and they had no idea what a thinking cap was. How many of you can remember your teachers going, okay, boys and girls, it's time to put on our thinking caps, right? So, boys and girls, it's time to put on our thinking caps. You know, when I think about COVID, there are lots of lessons that we had an opportunity to learn over those 16 months. Lots of them that sort of unfold for us as we move forward. And so I want to use that as a framework for some of the things that we're going to try and do moving forward. So one of the great things that I learned about COVID is we're still here. Right? We know loved ones and lost ones who might not still be here with us, but we're still here. And Central Church, we're still here. Right? There are lots of other places and businesses and all kinds of agencies that struggled hugely and can't say that. But we can. In fact, Jesse, how many people are here today?
53.
That's fantastic. You know, for our first Sunday back, and to be able to say, hey, we're still here. God must still have something for us. And I realized that through COVID, every obstacle is an opportunity. And I've had to rethink and wonder and sort of pose all kinds of questions. Sort of like in Nadi's song, that there are hard things that come your way, but God is able to address those. God did not give us an overcoming life. He gives us a life as we overcome. We wind up in these hardships, and COVID for sure, and other things will come along that are going to push us and ask us, do you have what it takes to find a sense of success and to find a sense of recovery? And so years ago, I learned this new word, and I'm going to start to put it into my vocabulary, probertunities. Probertunities. And when I'm with the Amharics, I always go, okay, say that word. Probertunities. Because I'm trying to get them to learn English while they're having translation. Probertunities. When a problem becomes an opportunity. And I'd like to suggest that after 16 months, we have an unbelievable opportunity ahead of us. So we've got these problems, but we've got an unbelievable opportunity. Paulo's first message, and I just couldn't get all the things that I needed for today, he remembered the Sermon of the Boxes. Any of you remember the Sermon of the Boxes? And we had the platform sort of covered with all kinds of boxes. And the big statement was to try and think outside the box. And so that sermon was in 2014. And we had to think about what is Central going to look like and where are we going to go and how is that going to happen and all kinds of questions and uncertainties. And who would have imagined as we started to think outside the box what would have happened? And Paulo's favorite statement is this: instead of thinking outside the box, get rid of the box and sort of go, what else can we do and how else can we dramatically think? And so here's what I wanted to have on the platform: all of these moving boxes. And I went to Home Depot on Saturday, and there's not a single moving box at Home Depot. I'm going, what's going on? It's like the middle of the month. Nobody moves till the end of the month. That would be me, a short-range planner, right? It's like if you're moving at the end of the month, you're packing now. Speaking of packing, Margaret and Walter Littlewood have sold their place. Took them 2 days. They're packing up and they're moving to Blackfalds to be closer to their family. And she's just recovering from knee surgery. I think she had that on Thursday. She was sent home on Friday and doing stairs and everything else. Like she just thanked us all for those prayers that we offered on her behalf. And they're thrilled because now they realize being separated from their family, they don't want that anymore. They want to try and get as close to them. So for us, it's this whole idea, maybe we should get moving. I'm not saying that we move out of the building, but I'm saying, what does it look like if we start to keep moving forward? Because this question, will going back help us move forward? It's an interesting thought. And so, this isn't a question and answer like at school, raise your hands. I'm just posing the questions. And so here's some of the backdrop from all of this from Matthew 9. John's disciples came to Jesus and asked him, how is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast? And Jesus answered, how can the guests of the bridegroom mourn, which is the connection with fasting, while he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and then they will feast. And on another occasion, we'll take a look at the whole structure around Jewish weddings. And Jesus is referring to the time when the bridegroom will leave to prepare everything, but the bridegroom will come back. And it's in that absence time that there's a sense of mourning and a waiting and an anticipation. And so in that side, then he continues on with these two illustrations. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the path will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. And if you want some explanation on that, Rabina can explain about patches and sewing and repairs and all that other stuff. Neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst, and the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved. And I want you to hang on to that phrase, and both are preserved. I was going to do a lengthy discussion on winemaking 101. And in some churches, they collectively sort of have a winemaking class, and they sort of are quite comfortable with that world. And others in the evangelical world are going, nope, we're doing grape juice for communion. The first time I had wine at an evangelical church for communion was at a Brethren church. And nobody let me know, right? So they're passing the juice out, and we're taking it, and I threw it back like I would any other bit of communion juice, and it was like, whoa, I started to flush, like all kinds of things with that. Anyway, it was an interesting one. So this isn't a message on whether we should or should not use wine or grape juice. But here's what I did learn about new wineskins and old wineskins. The skins of grapes already have a yeast growing on them, so when they sort of get all crushed up, they turn into wine and ferment, and fermentation then expands the container. And so we've got this picture of a couple of new and old wineskins. And the idea being, you can't put the new stuff in the old stuff, or you're going to lose the old stuff and you're going to lose the new stuff. Right? So that's why Jesus has this emphasis. No one pours new wine into an old wineskin. So let's take a look at what they might look like, because I got trying to figure out, so old wineskins, like I'm thinking the little flask thing, but they think in bigger terms than that. So this is what a new wineskin would often look like. It looks like a goat upside down, or a sheep upside down, skinned out, new, and you can see what the old looks like. Weathered, worn out, all the elasticity is gone. And if you put something new in there, for sure it's going to burst because the contents are under pressure. In some ways, like Jack, it's like what's in us spills out, right? And so we've got this overflowing, and I'm suggesting that as followers of Jesus, we have this opportunity recently to sort of to move into something new. And I really believe that life is about change. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's beautiful, but most of the time it's both. And our congregation, we've had massive changes over the last 7 years, because I think this is my 7th summer. June 10th was my auditioning Sunday, 2014. So we're past that. And God has done amazing things, but we felt that tension because growth is painful. Change is painful. But nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere you don't belong. And so we've got this struggle. And then I found this other wonderful thought quote. And it's this: change is never painful. Like I could relate to the other ones, right? And then I found this other one: change is never painful. Only resistance to change is painful. So I saw some of you going just like I did. Tony Robbins, who's a motivational speaker, he has this statement: change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And so as a congregation, we've felt this pressure because we've sort of found ourselves going, what's next? And as Mary was looking through the church directory recently, just this past week, looking to make some phone calls, and she went, oh, they're not here, because they're gone. Not like the little ones. Like, they've got their reward. They're with Jesus. A number of our family have aged away. So, what would it look like? What does Central sort of begin to look like as we think about a future? And I posed this question about what ifs? What are the ifs that we might be able to confront? And I thought about this little church that really was the spiritual roots for me, and it's the Church of Christ in Toronto, Keele Street Church of Christ. And that little building is where I first went to Bible college. Much like in the 1930s when Alberta Bible College started in our basement. But I don't think it was this basement. It was the old basement on 11th, right? And so from that 11th building, we moved to this space. And in this space, we then built that space. And the Church of Christ at Keele Street is where I started Bible college. Now, that church looks a little different. In 1993, a new pastor went there, and they eventually built that a huge addition, which expanded them and doubled up their auditorium space to close to 200. And on their website, it now says this: Keele Street Christian Church, a non-denominational community church in the Junction High Park area of Toronto. We could say in the northern part of Lethbridge, with a strong cultural focus. It is our desire to be a warm, inviting place where people from every tribe and nation feel comfortable as they explore and grow in a relationship with Jesus Christ. Please join us as we try to share and live out God's message of love, hope, and new beginnings through the amazing grace of God. So here's the interesting thing about their church. Grant McDonald is their pastor now. That's him. Smiley face just like me. Look at his leadership team. Now, they're not Ethiopian. Pick the country they're from. Where are they from? Philippines. Exactly. Somebody's got some good connections. All 3 of their elders are from the Philippines. 90% of that congregation is Filipino. But when I went there were just a few. The Manamtim family. And they introduced me to Filipino food. Whew, it's great. right? And so I keep hoping that our Filipino types will start coming back on a regular basis so we can have some Filipino food as well as our Ethiopian food. We've got Ethiopia today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so very exciting. So what happened was they had a change of mindset is what was going on. And that's the part that I want us to focus in on as well. What is involved in changing the mindset about our future? How do we move into a new mindset? And so I want us to consider a couple of things. I attended it was 6 days of training when I was on the board at Alberta Bible College. And it was hosted by the Association of Biblical Higher Education, abbreviated ABHE. And it was on board governance. And they spent 2 sessions focused in on one single principle as a board member. And I want to share some of the brief things about that because it was a foundational shift for all of us that attended. And then we started to feed that into the board structure as a mindset. And so here's what it was. God is the absolute owner of all things. God is the absolute owner of all things. In 1 Chronicles 29, as I've got it there, David praised the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly, saying, "Praise be to you, Lord, the God of our father Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor, for everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom." I think I remember that from a Lord's Prayer or something. "For yours is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and to give strength to all. Now, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name." First Chronicles tells us God is the owner of everything. And it's just going to nudge your mind for now before it becomes a mindset. God is the owner, and here's the thing. We are his managers. We are his managers, and I'm not going to go through all of these, the statements and the concepts here, but money, time, possessions, abilities, people, the environment. All God asks is that we bring honor to him. And so in the things that we do, and as we consider our future days, the bottom line will always be, did we honor God with that? So a couple of quick things on ownership, and you'll be able to get these slides if you'd like them. Ownership is the act, state, or right of possessing something. The term is mine. We learned that as a little kid at about 2 or younger, especially if we had siblings and they were older or younger, and we learned the word mine very quickly. I'm in charge. Accountability to me first, my wants, my interest. Doing a good job with myself in mind first. Maybe harder to let go when the time comes. It's interesting to watch as people age, how much stuff they collect and how hard it is to get rid of it. I'm not so upset about the getting it. I'm confused by the holding on to it. It doesn't fit. It might eventually come back into fashion like 50 years later. Like we just hold on to stuff. And so that permeates even into us as a congregation. So here's what stewardship looks like. Stewardship, the job of supervising or taking care of something. See the subtle difference? The taking care of it, not owning it. I've been put in charge. It's an assigned responsibility to take care of these things. It's accountability to others first. How is this going to benefit the company or the congregation or our reputation? It's doing a good job with others in mind first. Constantly prepared for someone else to take over. I often, over all of our ministry years, have encouraged leaders as they've been there for a long time, you need to step down so someone else can step up. Think about that. A leader who's looking to step down so someone else could step up. That's what stewardship means. So here's the thing. So many of us tend to have more of what would be called a fixed mindset. It's clear in our heads. This is how it's going to go. This is how it's been. And this is how I want it. We have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And this is what is the struggle in lots of businesses and lots of churches and lots of agencies. We get a fixed mindset instead of going, will this help us grow the kingdom? A growth mindset. And so that's why when we have this idea of these new ideas being presented, it's so tough at times because we're like the old wineskin. So, some things about what if? What if? And so with the what ifs, I've got this other question that I thought about. What will it look like? What does it look like? What does it look like? And I saw some of you are going, okay, Harold, what does it look like? What does it look like? So I've got some questions because that's a good question. Here's the first question. What should we call ourselves? Keel Street Church of Christ changed their name from Keel Street Church of Christ to Keel Street Christian Church. The reason they did that was at that time, in the mid-90s, in Toronto, there was a Church of Christ that was very, very, very big, very influential, very controlling, very spiritually abusive, very dominating, and very problematic. And so when people heard about Keel Street Church of Christ, the question they always got was, oh, are you like the Toronto Church of Christ? And they were, well, no, we're no, right? So they changed their name. So what should we call ourselves? Another one. What should it look like inside our building? I took down all the drapes, right? Because we can figure out what it's going to look like moving forward. What should it look like outside our building? So I know that we put up signs and things like that. Some great things have happened. We spent lots of money on the outside of our building. Rightly so. Here's another one. Who should be using our building? Should anybody be using it? Or just us? How often should they use our building if we let them in? What other partnerships could we consider? What should we be trying to prioritize? What programs might meet their needs? Who will lead us into our future? And what skills do they need? And so these were just a bunch of questions because 9 years ago, we were asking ourselves those questions. You were, I wasn't here then. But what's wrong with these questions? This is the deeper question. Let me show you. Remember back on the mindset between ownership and management, or ownership and stewardship rather? Those questions were very good ownership questions because they used a 3-letter word, our. These questions use a 4-letter word, God's, or God. And you see the challenge in all of this. The challenge is for us at this point in our future going, God, what's next for us? What does it look like? Because even back in 2014 when we were trying to sort it out, we don't look very much like what we thought we might way back then. And I believe that's because we were open to seeing what God might do in and through us. But here's the thing. It's hard to hear God's voice when you've already decided what you want him to say. And that's the struggle. Because I've got a whole lot of questions and not so many answers. Like, there's lots of times that it's easy for me to sort of have lots of answers because I'm creative and I think in lots of strange ways and things like that. But they're not supposed to be my answers. They're supposed to be God's answers for us. Because it's like charting a new course. It's like trying to figure out how we become and what we become and where we're going to go. And a passage from 1 Chronicles chapter 12 talks about a group of people, a tribe of people from the sons of Issachar, men who know how to interpret the signs of the times to determine what Israel should do. And they were looking back then for people who understood the signs of the times. So a simple question that I'd had at Alberta Bible College was, should we get rid of the building? Is that how we would best deliver higher education to the community of people around the world? Are bricks and mortar the answer? I was listening to CBC and they were talking about wedding planners and the primary wedding registry. You all know wedding registries? That's where couples tell you what they want and expect you to get it for them, right? It used to be Bed Bath & Beyond was the number one. Now it's Amazon, right? It's like, whoa, because they'll deliver right to your door. You can get the gifts way before the wedding, just send it over, right? So understanding what it's going to look like, and that's why we're trying to figure out, can we do both? Because we've got people still at home. Men of Issachar. In Matthew 13, it says that Jesus said to them, therefore, every teacher of the law who has become a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old. I'm not suggesting that we get rid of everything at all. In fact, it's not necessarily mine to suggest. It's ours to discern. What is it that from our old we want to hang on to? Like that. That will never change in our group. Never. The sharing of the gospel. The biblical foundations that we built our church on. I've coined this phrase, ancient pathways with a modern message. We look back to these ancient pathways to find a modern message for today. And Isaiah, God is speaking, remember not the former things, nor consider the things of old. Don't get tied up in all of that. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. That was John the Baptist. I will make a way. And I believe that COVID has created an opportunity. However it got here, I'm not worried about that. But it's created an opportunity for us to consider where we might be going. We will always be biblically based, and we will always seek to be culturally relevant. Hence why Natty and them were here. Hence our connection with the Ethiopians. Hence our connection with the Bhutanese. Hence our connection on Canada Day with our neighbors. We had people that just came, and they've been part of our program since then whenever we've had something that they could be connected with. You see, ideals are like the stars. We never reach them, but like the mariners of the sea, we chart our courses by them. I'm a stargazer from the get-go. My head's been up in the clouds and up in the stars for all of my life. Keep looking and seeking and saying, trying to see beyond and try to imagine and try to envision and try to cast vision and things like that. Because remember this? Remember we're all in this together, 6 feet apart. And isn't it great that you're sitting beside family and friends and you're jamming the pews? Like, how good is that? We got rid of the tape that were on there. Some of you didn't even know we taped the spaces, right? To try and keep us all safe. So, I'm not so excited about where we were. I'm committed to moving forward. And I think that's where we are at the steps. We're at the start of something. The start of engaging again. So now what? I've got a couple of things that I know we need to do. We need to meet to seek God's plan. We need to meet to discover who is with us. Some of us got old over the last 16 months. Some of us had surgeries over the last 16 months. Some of us are waiting to have surgeries in the next couple of months. What are we going to be able to do? And to ask ourselves, have I got it in me, so to speak? We need to meet to discover who is with us, who's going to be able to keep doing things for us. We need to meet to ask questions, meet to find answers, meet to plan a course of action moving forward, meet to develop the next specific steps, and then take the next steps and trust God for the outcome. My whole hope is that our next years are our best years, that our future days are our brightest days. And I found this cute quote, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. Some of you crawled in here today. But by all means, keep moving. Keep moving forward. As many of you know, I prefer a preaching style that takes me through a book. And so for a long time, we were in the book of Colossians verse by verse. We're now going back through it, looking at character qualities. And on the way out, if you're interested, I put together a bit of a survey, 50 of them, questions where you can sort of check up on how you're doing. And next Sunday, we're going to pick up with some of the next ones. But the key for us is not how much work will it take, but what will it take to make it work. And that's hard when you haven't got the energy you used to. The gardens are smaller, right? All kinds of things. But foundationally for us, what is it going to take to make it work? Now the next one, Jess. So I'll see you next Sunday. But before we leave here, there's two things that we're going to talk about to finish. Go ahead, Jess. This is a special gift Sunday for all of you. We have the offering out at the entryway so that we can manage that easily. There'll be a red basket that you can put your gifts in. There's no expectation on you. This is our just welcome back. But we know that several of you have been trying to give towards the support. We've greatly appreciated that from everyone. And also some have been made aware that we have a special project with a missions project in Uganda with Cyrus and Grand Maria School. And so they put out a special appeal for some of those funds. And so if you are aware of that and you're wanting to give to that, this will be the last Sunday, and then we'll be sending the money out near the end of the week. So you can give in person, you can give online, and you can give by mail as an expression of your stewardship. Okay, Jess? Jesus got away with God, got away to be with God during his earthly ministry. If he needed that time, what makes us think that we can do this life alone? Each week I send out a prayer newsletter. If you'd like to get that, I'd be more than glad to send it to you. We do post it on our private Facebook page to keep confidentiality. But I also have some of those that church says, the Central Sentinel out in the entryway. And so we're going to close in prayer. And then much like I've done on all of our recorded messages, I always end with this. And so at the end, we'll go ahead and pray this one together if you'd like. Let's bow together.